Oh, today I'm thrilled to welcome Chris and Lisa, founders of Been There, Got Out, to the show. They are internationally recognized high conflict divorce, custody, and co parenting strategists, and more importantly, survivors of their own chaotic divorces. Chris, a formerly technology entrepreneur, and Lisa, an ex English teacher turned business owner, never imagined their midlife journey would lead them here. After enduring years long battle, after legal battles, draining financial losses, and the emotional roller coaster of dealing with narcissistic ex-partners, they realized that traditional legal system just wasn't enough. So they became the experts they desperately needed, dedicating themselves to helping men and women navigate the worst divorce and custody scenarios. With a blend of hard-won wisdom, empathy, and strategy, Chris and Lisa empower their clients to reclaim control, protect their children, and emerge stronger on the other side. If you're in the trenches, these are the people you want in your corner. Welcome, Chris and Lisa, to the show. I really appreciate you guys taking the time after Christmas. So introduce yourself and we'll go from there.
I was going to say thank you so much for having us and that intro. I'm actually impressed. I wish we could hire us back in like 12 years ago or so.
Yeah. So we are high conflict divorce strategists that specialize in something called legal abuse. All of our clients are men and women throughout the world dealing with the worst divorces, separations, custody battles, and co-parenting hell. And we always say our clients belong to my lawyer says this is the craziest case they've ever had club. So we specialize in, like I said, legal abuse, where their exes are using the legal system to wear them down and bleed them dry financially. So these are the cases that go on for years, cost hundreds of thousands, if not more dollars, where kids are weaponized, and put in the middle. And we actually have a book coming out soon called When Your Ex Turns the Kids Against You, since unfortunately we found that it is the most common form of post-separation abuse. We say that once you get out of the relationship, your ex is limited to 3 things to still exert that power over you: money, kids, and the court. We know money and the court goes hand in hand, but kids last the longest and are the most painful. So thank you so much, David, for hosting us and letting us talk about this topic that makes people uneasy, but we are passionate about.
Let's unpack the high conflict divorce term. What exactly is that? What are the parts of that?
Well, there are times. So a normal divorce, let's start with a normal divorce, right? Nobody has fun in a divorce, right? I guess you have the crazy people who are just like, oh, we'll be friends. But most divorces or most marriages you don't go into a marriage thinking we're going to get divorced. Something happens to tear that bond apart. And it's rarely something pleasant, right? So it's very normal for people to be angry, to resent maybe somebody cheated, somebody didn't hold up their end, there was whatever it was. It's an unpleasant experience. But when you're about 6 months to a year to maybe a year and a half into the process, and if it gets contentious and you're fighting and you're bleeding money in the legal system, most people start to calm down and say, I want to get on with my life. This is not worth fighting over. We have kids together. We need to work together. And most people turn the page eventually. Maybe they're not best friends with their exes, but they work it out. Whether an uneasy truce, let's call it, minimally, right? Ours are the exceptions. Both Lisa's case and my case personally were exceptions. And the root problem or the core problem that we see in our work is that lawyers know that process, right? Lawyers understand that people start out angry and they calm down. Well, in the cases like our personal cases and all the people we work with, that doesn't happen. So lawyers get confused. Their scripts don't work. Their normal cadence isn't followed. And you mentioned a little bit about your divorce as we were getting ready to start the interview. My divorce took 3 years and cost $300,000. There was no reason for it, no logical reason for it. There was nothing to fight over. We ended up right where we started, but my ex wanted to fight. So in the cases we deal with, the root problem is usually something like a personality disorder, like narcissism, borderline, whatever. Lisa and I are not mental health professionals. We do not diagnose anyone, but we recognize patterns, and the patterns are remarkably consistent. So it's the problematic ones that go off the rails that people don't realize until, in my case, like I said, 3 years in, having bled all that money, having gotten nowhere, this is different. This needs a different approach.
Yeah. So high conflict divorce is where that anger never subsides. So they just stay angry. It doesn't matter if they have a new partner. They will do everything to try to destroy you. We call it like a clinging kind of hatred. So most people, when they think divorce, they think, okay, after that time, like Chris recognized, and it's usually 4 to 6 months actually, people think I want to calm down and go on with my life already and do what's best for the kids. Our clients' exes want the opposite. They want to keep the conflict going as much as possible because then they still have your attention and they have the audience. Because once that's cut off, then where are they left? So they need the audience.
What are some of the early warning signs that you've seen if you're headed to a high conflict custody battle or divorce?
So
How long do we have?
I know. My lawyer, the first time we met when I had my consult, he knew 20 minutes into the conversation. He's yours is going to be a bad one. And I was astonished because I always say I thought my ex was a good person who had done some bad things. So later we interviewed him for our first book and he had a list of factors which he just knew in his head but never really organized. One was something Chris recognized, someone who has a personality disorder and or an active addiction. Because someone who has an active addiction is not thinking logically and their judgment is impaired. So they're not thinking about what's in their own best interest. So they're not thinking about consequences. So that's why they burn through money and they fight and they don't think about the impact it'll have on the family long term. Another thing we recognize as a red flag is when somebody has this entitled attitude, especially towards money. We say what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine too. And they hide assets. They won't share their financial records, whether at the beginning, in mediation, or just throughout the legal process. They will not show their money or they just will claim that it's theirs and they don't need to share. And then I'd say, and I mean, there's several, but just to touch on a couple, the other one that kind of surprised me that my lawyer said was victims of domestic violence, which is all we deal with. And I thought, it's because their abuser is coming after them. We said, no, it's actually the mindset of our own clients who hopeful. So they keep trying to work it out with their ex. They can't believe that their ex would be doing this. So it's a lot of stopping and starting because they keep thinking it's going to get better. We don't need a lawyer, or they get overwhelmed by the process. But usually it's because their ex's voice is still so in their head that they don't want to listen to anything. Their brain chemistry has been altered. So it's very hard for them to move through the divorce process, and lawyers get very frustrated by people in this situation because they can't make clear decisions. So those are some indications.
What are some of the biggest mistakes people make dealing with a ex who has narcissistic tendencies? I'm not going to call them narcissists.
Yeah.
Tendencies.
Chris, do you want me to do it or you want to?
Yeah, go ahead. I've got a few things, but
Yeah. So one of them is thinking that they don't need their own lawyer. They don't need their own ally and advocate. They get convinced at the very beginning that their ex is going to be a good person and not go as low as they go. Sometimes our men, I notice, tend to be more hopeful than our female clients. They're still like, I really love my wife and I'm really going to keep trying. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you don't know what you're headed for. And then when the false allegations come and the police are there and they cannot fathom that this would be happening, we're like, we could see it coming. We know that's going to happen. So not believing the signs. So like when we talk to someone like, this is what's going to happen, and not learning their own legal rights and just believing their ex is probably the biggest mistake. Another big one, which we do more than anything with everyone, is something we call strategic communication. So people will often write things or get in conversations where they'll pop off because they're so emotional, and then it's used as exhibits against them. So we always like to, right at the very beginning, we say no undocumented communication. If you have a conversation, we're going to follow up with something in writing, but it's very important from the start, especially if you have children, to present as the best co-parent ever and to start documenting your ex's patterns of behavior over time, the impact it has on your children and on your relationship with your children. And then the third thing I think that we see, especially with our women in particular, is they are confused with domestic violence and custody. They think that it's all one thing. They think if their ex abused them, then therefore they shouldn't have custody of the kids. And they don't understand that in the family court system, custody factors are separate from domestic violence. You need to understand that just because something happened between you and your ex, that the court might not necessarily consider that when determining custody, because kids have their separate relationship with each parent. And in this country and in most countries throughout the world, children are entitled to have a relationship with both parents, and the courts are looking for each of those parents to support that relationship no matter what. If you have documented neglect and abuse, which is very rare, and keep in mind, Chris and I only deal with the craziest high conflict cases. It is very rare to completely strip someone of their parental rights. We see people in jail, men and women, who still have parental rights. So to know from the very beginning what you're dealing with, and to not come in with this whole argument about how bad the other person is, because that's the kind of thing that makes people less likely to get custody. And so people are just ignorant. And that's one of the biggest mistakes, is that kind of ignorance and thinking that this is also logical and that the judge is going to believe you and validate your story. That's just not how it works.
And to expand a bit on something Lisa touched on a couple of times there, it's underestimating what your ex might be capable of, right? So we'll work it out. I'm sure like this, it's sad the relationship's over, but we'll work it out. We'll put the kids first. And all of a sudden there are false claims of child abuse. There are false claims of that you assaulted your spouse, lies in court, failure to cooperate with the process. And you're just like, wait, what's going on here? So one of the key things is recognizing early, if you can, before the process starts, that this is going to be a problem. So right from the beginning, you can approach it that way and be thorough and expect the unexpected, so to speak. And then another mistake, the original question was about mistakes people make. One we see constantly is as you're entering the legal system, choosing a lawyer and how you interact with your lawyer. A lot of people will they bring the relationship dynamics. A lot of times there was a power and control imbalance, right? The spouse was in charge and you just went along with everything. You bring that dynamic to the lawyer. You go to the lawyer and say, they drop boxes on the desk and say, save me. I'll do whatever you say, save me. And because the lawyer's playbook isn't built for this, when they try and save you, their tactics don't work and it just gets really messy. So you need to have a more active role, and we call it taking strategic oversight of your case. It doesn't mean you don't listen to the lawyer. It just means you have to be more involved. You have to have more of a leadership role.
Let's dive a little bit more into the communication, the documentation. So what kind of communication documentation should you do, and what should you hold on to, and what you should be keeping track of?
All right. So I think that now we're getting into something we call custody factors or best interest factors. And this is something we usually go over with people the first time we meet them, because everyone has an idea of what the court is going to care about, and they don't understand that there's most of the stuff they think is important probably isn't. But one of the most important things is the factor I started getting into, and that's that each parent will support the child's relationship with the other parent, and nobody should be undermining that relationship with the other parent. So like we said, mistakes people make is they'll go in and they'll start bashing their ex and how bad their ex is. By doing that, you are going against the values of the court. So Chris and I actually belong to something called the Amicable Divorce Network, which is like an oxymoron because we are the only high conflict specialists in that field. But the reason that we belong to is because we're interested in meeting professionals and working with people who can help us help our clients lower the level of conflict. Instead of blaming and accusing in the communication, we always want to make sure that whatever we're doing is encouraging that child's relationship. And there's ways to do it. Something to communicate about is your child's consistency, stability, and routine. The court is always looking for the parent who is likely to keep things as steady as possible, that when a separation happens, a child's life is disrupted more than anything else. So you always want to be focused on your children in terms of their routine, that let's figure out how we can work together to do whatever it takes to get them through this as healthy and unscathed as possible. Those are like two main ones. There's other things that really matter, but I think those two are the most important focuses. Let's understand that our children have a right to love both of us, no matter how angry we are with each other, and that we really should try to shield them from the conflict between us. So you always want to present as the parent who's, I'm trying to keep them out of here. I'm not out of our conflict, and keep their routine as steady as possible as we go through this.
Yeah. And Lisa, you made me think about the Children's Bill of Rights, right? So there are a lot of states have passed, besides every state, every jurisdiction has their list of factors. They're very similar jurisdiction to jurisdiction of the things that matter that courts should put weight on when evaluating and issuing custody orders. The Children's Bill of Rights is something that a lot of states have adopted. It varies, but if you just Google it, Children's Bill of Rights, there's a list. I think it's 10, Lisa. Is it 10 or so? But they're all things that everybody would agree with, right? The right not to be put in the middle, all of that stuff. The right to express love for both parents. And courts, even in states that haven't adopted officially, they're universal values that everybody could agree with. So if you can align your narrative with those values and show that your narrative and what you're asking the court for supported by that narrative, you're likely to put yourself in the best chance of getting something you can accept and live with. And that's really the goal.
Yeah. So it's like there's parental rights, but there's also children's rights.
Good.
That they have that right to peace, and they have a right to privacy also when communicating with their other parent.
Wow. What are some of the strategies for communicating with a hostile co-parenting situation without escalating the conflict? That's really big for men.
Pause. Don't respond. Like when you get look, I spent years when we use something called Our Family Wizard, which a lot of people use. There are apps out there that are really effective in high conflict cases of talking parents. There are a bunch of them, but I used Our Family Wizard. And whenever I get a message from my ex, it would make this little noise and I would get a pit in my stomach. What fresh hell is this? What is it now?
Yeah.
And it would always happen. The kids would go back to mom. I'm hanging out with Lisa early on when we first met in 2015. And I'd be sitting holding her hand. Here we are falling in love. And then this noise. No, you know what now? And that was intentional, right? Like my ex knew that I was in a new relationship, knew she was disrupting and inserting herself into my life, because when the relationship ended, her desire to exert power and control over me did not end. It doesn't. That's the big thing, right? That desire did not end. So when I said pause, it's take the emotion out. You're going to have a reaction for a while that does get better over time. But pause, don't respond emotionally. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff after that. Like you are going to make sure there's no emotion. You stick just to the facts. You don't react. I'm shocked you would do that. You're so bad. None of that. Just we have an issue. What do you think the solution? You need to demonstrate your cooperation, your willingness to be a good co-parent.
Yeah, we came up with the system. Chris thought of the acronym called FRAC. It's like a 4-part template that gets into the fact, 2 responses you're allowed, something called a universal agreement, and a collaborative statement, but it's an art form, so you don't use all 4. But the universal agreement is something that we try to drop into as many communications as possible. And I mentioned a couple of them when I was talking earlier. Like, I'm sure we can both agree that. I'm sure we can both agree how important it is to shield the kids from the conflict between us. I'm sure we both would do anything to make sure our kids succeed in school. I'm sure our kids' mental health is important to both of us. So you say something, we also limit the amount of times you say I and you. But when you say we agree, your ex will probably feel like you're trying to control them, but they can't disagree with statements like that. Who's going to say, I don't care if our kids do well. I don't care about involving in the conflict. It would look really bad. So once you can put forth a universal agreement like that, it's almost like an anchor. And then after that is we already agreed that our kids' routine is important. We already agreed to shield them from the conflict, and yet this happened. So how are we going to keep working together to protect them from the conflict? You trap your difficult ex into these lines on that they can't disagree with.
Right. You set the standard by which whatever you decide, whatever the issue is, whether it's get braces or don't get braces, you set the standard by which whatever you do will be evaluated.
Yeah.
And
Right.
and this is for that you always say you're writing to your ex, but you're writing for the invisible audience, a judge, a mediator, your kid's therapist, a guardian ad litem, or custody evaluator. And then Chris also mentioned the pause. So one of the perks that we offer our clients is something called the permission slip plan. So we say we're going to put you on the permission slip plan, which means once we teach you strategic communication, and because it's really hard and it's going to take you a while to learn, you have to practice. So send us drafts of what you think you want to say, and we will proofread and edit them for you because we want you to have clean hands and the record to be clean, and you're going to be perfect. We're going to make sure you are perfection and you don't have the burden of another burden. Am I saying it right? Am I doing it right? Like, we will do it and you will learn to do it yourself. It is very empowering to learn how to stand up to a bully. And AI does not do it for you. So learning how to communicate properly in writing with your own words, it also helps build one of the best exhibits for court.
And also have reasonable expectations of what's going to happen, right? Usually you're not going to get a solution to whatever the problem is. Once in a while, you might. And that's great when it happens. Usually what you're going to get back is either like this long missive about how awful you are, like bringing in everything from the past, this whole long diatribe that rips you apart. Or alternatively, the other thing we see a lot is you get nothing. You get crickets because you wrote an effective communication and they don't know what to do with it. So they just do nothing and they ignore it. But like I said, every once in a while you solve the problem.
But both of those strengthen your case, because
That's right.
if you're staying child focused and they send a big attack on you as a parent, they're not participating in solving something for your child. If they're silent, it's still on the record. And then it's like, it's true. And they didn't care enough to respond about something involving your child. So either way, it strengthens your case, but it is a long game.
And I know your question was about documentation, but there's another side benefit here in that when you learn to effectively communicate, you do start to establish some boundaries, which is very difficult with the kind of people we deal with.
All right, Chris, get out of my head. That's my next question. Boundaries.
Yep. All right.
Go ahead. Yeah.
They hate boundaries, right? They just, when they see a boundary, it's something to be destroyed, gone through, gone around, ignored, whatever. How dare you remove yourself from my sphere of influence? Well, when you communicate effectively and don't get sucked into their long rants about extraneous issues and you stay on the topic and you stay unemotional, that you start to starve them. And that's really because their animosity, we have this little saying that when you get out of a toxic relationship, yeah, you get your life back, but you also get a door prize. That door prize is your own personal terrorist that you get to carry around with you for the rest of your life. But they're not, if you do a good job of establishing those very difficult to establish boundaries, enforcing them, keeping them at arm's length, eventually they do get bored and stop. They don't stop, they slow down. They'll still try every once in a while, but you're not exciting to them anymore. And that's the idea. We want them to get bored with you and move on.
That's one of the things I think a lot of people don't realize is they want your attention. They want your negative attention. They want to engage you in an argument. So working with people to learn that if we just don't answer at all, even though we want you to send it, we say, send us a draft, vent it. We'll put it in our little box of things never to be sent to the ex, but you got to get it out. Get it out, but it's not for them. So that's when we start to starve them and like big, they get very frustrated.
Wow. Let's go back to the beginning. If you know you're going to be in a high conflict divorce, what should you look for in a lawyer?
What a great question. I think, let me start with the mistake. A lot of people come to us and say, my lawyer doesn't understand narcissism. You don't need a lawyer who's also a psychologist. They are very few and far between, the ones that are experts in this particular area. We call them unicorns. You don't need a unicorn. Goes back to what I was saying earlier about having strategic oversight of your case. Your responsibility is to fill in the gaps in the lawyer not being an expert in personality disorders, right? Your job the lawyer's job for you is to do the lawyer things well, to communicate with you clearly, to have clear billing policies, to advocate strongly for you, to work together with you, to have a strategy that makes sense and fits everything that's going on in your case, those kinds of things.
Yeah. So in our first book that came out in 2023, here it is, we have a whole chapter on how to choose not a good lawyer, but the right lawyer. And we have some questions, and some of them are probably ones that people have heard before. But one of the best questions that is my favorite is to, at the end of a consult, say to the lawyer, how would you handle a case like mine? Because it's multi-layered. If you ask this, it gives them a chance to show that they've actually listened to what you've said. And it gives them a chance to show that they've had experience with cases like yours. And third, what's the strategy? Because one of our red flags is lawyers that say, I handle all kinds of cases. If you say, do you do high conflict or narcissistic, whatever, they'll be like, of course. So show me. I've just told you about my situation. Tell me how you would handle it. So you want to see that they're experienced and they know what they're doing and can say, I got it.
You mentioned, David, before we came on the air, about what a trendy buzzword narcissism is, right? Everybody says, oh, my ex is a narcissist, whether it's true or not. I don't know all these people, but lawyers tell us that everybody comes to them saying, I'm divorcing a narcissist.
Or
so lawyers know that, right? So lawyers, they write their blog posts about dealing with narcissists. They put on their website, we deal with narcissists, because it drives business. It brings business into the practice, whether or not they actually understand how to deal with those people. So you got to dig a little bit deeper and not just accept they say, I know how to deal with people like that. A great place to do that, there's a site called Avvo, AVVO.com. And it's like Yelp for attorneys. It has reviews and things like that. And when you dive in there, you got to keep in your mind, everybody who leaves reviews is either really delighted or really pissed off. So take it with a grain of salt, but you're looking for things. My case involved domestic violence. My case involved the false reports of child abuse, whatever it is, things that resonate with you that people have left in reviews and how the lawyer handled it. So if you look for those things in there, but like, you have to suss it out. You have to pull it out of the weeds in the reviews. Don't just go by how many stars or things like that.
Yeah. What are a few of the parts of a airtight parenting plan? And that will stand up in a court.
That's my superpower. Yeah. So this needs a lot of attention. And like, parenting plan is going to be your constitution from when the judge issues the order, right? This is going to govern all the rules about sharing parenting responsibilities between you and your ex. When lawyers write them, they make sense. They look good. They say what they should say, but they don't have the detail. If you do not put specifics, including deadlines, including consequences for not if, but when someone violates, what happens? Because think about your ex. If you've got our problem, they don't care about rules. They're above it all, right? They're going to look at this order and say, I don't feel like doing that. And they don't do it. And then what are you going to do? You're going to bring, a perfect example is the right of first refusal, right? Everybody says, my ex insisted on 50-50, but they work all the time. So I'll put in a right of first refusal. And then when they go on their business trips, I'm going to get the kids. Well, they put the right of first refusal in there. Their ex goes on the business trip, leaves the kids with the new girlfriend, and the judge doesn't enforce it, right? Because those clauses in particular are hard to enforce. So you need to say, if you have a right of first refusal and the ex violates it and leaves town and leaves the kids with someone else, that you get like makeup time, maybe two days for every day, something like that. When you have enforcement language in there, a judge has no choice pretty much, right? You say, it says right here, if they do, this happens. So you need absolute meticulous detail. And the problem is, at the end of these cases, I told you my divorce took 3 years. I had nothing left. I had no energy, no money. By the time it was over, I was just like, yeah, that's fine. That's what we agreed to when I signed it. Mine didn't end up being that big a problem, but you have to generate the energy right there at the end when you'd have the least of it to make sure that piece gets done properly.
Yeah, one of the things that we do for people is have Chris go over their parenting plans or potential parenting plans or agreements before they sign. So we have him use the eyes of an abuser. Where are the loopholes? The word reasonable, take all of that out unless it benefits our client, because reasonable is meaningless. So is it going to be actual, or are we going to take it out? Are we going to leave it in for fluff? Everything has to be intentional, not just, oh, this is what we normally do. So for example, one clause that we like to put in that my wonderful lawyer did in my agreement is so this is a binding legal agreement. It's a court order. If someone does not comply with this order or any orders resulting thereof, that person will pay, and we change the word reasonable to actual attorney's costs and auxiliary court costs. Like any expenses associating with enforcement, the actual amount, not reasonable, because when you say reasonable, you go back and the judge is, let's look at the timesheets and maybe they overcharged. Nope, It says actual. And if you're planning to comply with this order, why wouldn't you sign it that it's actual? I know I'm going to do it, so I'm not worried about it. So things like that. One word, for example, instead of may, shall. It's specific. It means it's going to happen, not maybe it will, and then the judge has to make a decision which they never want to make.
Wow. What are some of the myths about the legal system that people should be aware of? You talked about a couple. How about some more?
So people who know the story, A Few Good Men, like, oh, the judge is I'm going to go in and tell my story and they're going to rain down punishment on my ex. No, they're not. Most people don't even get a chance to tell their story. One thing that I used to do, the mistakes I made because I was in the legal system for about 10 years, is I would write these beautiful long speeches. I'd practice and then I'd get in there and the judge would be like, Miss Johnson, get to the point. So we say it's like you're paying $8 million for a 30-second Super Bowl commercial. So we teach something called front loading. It's like, Your Honor, I'm here asking for this, and here's why I'm entitled to it. Or one of my kids, right? Like, you got to get to the point. Nothing dramatic.
Most of us, our understanding of the legal system came from TV, or like we said, A Few Good Men, the movie, right? Where finally he breaks down and goes, you can't handle the truth, right? Those moments don't happen. We have lots of clients who are attorneys themselves in other areas of law, and they get in the family court system and they're like, oh my God, this is the Wild West. Like, judges just do whatever they want. It is a completely different animal when it comes to the field of law. It's almost like when you go to law school, they say, if it's family law, you just do what you want. So you really need to understand your judge, what your judge's preferences and biases and what the history is. Where did they come from? Not all judges were even family lawyers before. They were all lawyers, but not all family lawyers. In my own jurisdiction, we'd have judges rotate between the different types of law. And you get a new family law judge and they don't know. So really, it's understanding how the court works in your own jurisdiction. A lot of people think there are biases. The system's biased against men. That's what we hear from men. Oh, the system's biased in favor of men. That's what we hear from women. And judges, everybody's got biases in their own views, and judges are human beings. But for the most part, if you understand where they come from and you understand how decisions are made in your jurisdiction and tailor your argument, that's the best.
Yeah. And then a couple other mistakes people make or misconceptions is they think, especially coming out of a relationship involving domestic violence, men and women, is I need to get a pit bull attorney and they are going to go after my ex and I'm going to feel so much better. That costs so much money. So much money, and damages families. So we never want someone to get a pit bull attorney because they lack social emotional skills and they're not usually very civil either. So really watch out for that. And the other thing is people think this is going to happen fast. When I get to court next week, this is going to get done. And then there's so many delays called continuances. It's unbelievable. Or even during the day, it's like you go in at 9 o'clock and then the judge doesn't show up for 45 minutes. So you're sitting there paying your lawyer. Then the judge comes in and somebody else's case gets heard and they say, you know what, go talk to each other in the hallway. I'll see you at 1 o'clock. So then you're paying your lawyer for all those extra hours. Then you get in at 1 and the other side doesn't show up and they say, all right, they're not here. So let's schedule this for another 2 months. And you're just like, wait, what? And I just spent $5,000 paying my lawyer all day. So that's the kind of thing that happens. We want to keep you out of the legal system.
Right. Not just out of trial, but out of there's a whole ecosystem that has grown up around divorce. Custody evaluators, guardians ad litem, psychological evaluations. So I did it myself. Argued that my ex and I should have psychological evaluations just because I was trying to prove that she was a problem. $8,000 each later, we get reports and I read hers and I read mine and they're almost identical. It's the same, like
And
these
it doesn't matter. It wouldn't
huge
matter.
time, money wouldn't have helped anyway. If that report came back and said she's a stark raving narcissist, the judge would have been, so what?
Yeah.
And I would have wasted my opportunity. I had the judge's attention and I pointed that attention at the wrong thing and I missed an opportunity.
Right. Because even if someone were diagnosed, then they might be protected probably by the Americans with Disabilities Act. How does that impact someone's parenting?
The word narcissist does not appear in any list of custody factors we have ever seen.
What are some practical tips for presenting yourself effectively to judges and other professionals? There's got to be some tips.
All right, this is really hard, but the most important thing is you've got to be calm. You got to be calm, and it is very difficult. It takes a lot of training. You need to understand what you're there for. That sounds really obvious, but a lot of people are like, I don't really know, and I want to talk about this other stuff. You got to be laser focused, but we help our clients be calm by helping them stay really focused and organized on what matters. You need to be ready for opposing counsel to personally attack you. Not, oh, I hope it doesn't happen. It's going to happen. How are we going to deal with it? So we do a lot of training in terms of how to be a great witness, how to stay really focused, answer very briefly. It's not a show. It's like you want to just get through this and get out of there. So a lot of it involves also understanding something called ethos, like the etiquette of the court. We say it's like the Wizard of Oz. The judge is the wizard and you are Dorothy and you're begging. So you better not come in there acting like a know-it-all and this is my rights and all that, because you're going to end up out in your ears.
In your power suit with your red tie. That's
right.
not the impression you want to make. I would add to what Lisa said, like we have a lot of clients who are pro se, meaning self-represented, if not in their original divorce or separation later on. If I had to go to court now, which my kids are grown, but I would have to be pro se. I don't have the money anymore. Right. The first round completely drained me. And that was a decade ago. But whether or not you're pro se, have complete command of the facts that you want to present. Have your outline of the things you want to cover really ingrained. Know it cold. You don't have to know every dollar amount, every last little thing, but know your stuff so you can give a little elevator pitch on whatever point you're trying to make. If you know that stuff cold, your attention while you're in the courtroom can be on reading the room, can be on seeing what the judge is paying attention to, the judge's facial expressions. There was a time Lisa was in court and I was there as an observer, and her judge just it was a Friday afternoon, kept looking at the clock. There was a clock at the back, was not paying attention. I'm like, oh my God, she just wants to get out of here. This is not landing. So it's tweak, adjust. If the judge is sitting back and disinterested, you're not hitting the mark. If they're sitting forward and okay, asking questions, those kinds of things, seeing what's going on around you. You can't do that if your brain is, I got to say this next. I got to remember to say this. So have your stuff down cold.
Yeah, it's like you always also want to be conscious of not wasting. We often tell our clients to say this to a judge. I want to not waste this court's valuable time and resources. Time matters more than anything. They just want you out. And that day that Chris mentioned, this is amongst dozens of court appearances, I could see that the judge wasn't listening. And so I had to quickly pivot. So I remember going through a financial affidavit and I was thinking like, I want to prove that my ex is lying about the money. And then I could see her getting impatient. And I thought, you know what, let me just get right to the bills. Okay, did you pay? Do you have verifiable proof? Nope, next. And then I ended up doing extremely well and getting everything down to the penny because I did what the judge needed me to do. She didn't care about his credibility. She just wanted to know what do you want? What's the amount? Prove it to me. What do you need? And get out of here. It's Friday.
I got one for you guys. How do you help your clients handle setbacks or maybe a loss in?
Yeah, we call those gut punches. So yeah, we talk about the marathon mindset, and our clients are so brilliant. They were like, it's not about how long it takes, it's the training that's involved. So those gut punches happen and we're just like, this is part of the process. And it happened to me 10 years in court. I got some gut punches too. And you feel like so frustrated, but we'll often try to use a gut punch to say, you can wallow in this for a little while, but now you have some time to start figuring out either how to be more persuasive next time, how to start building a stronger case. Like, it's usually never over forever, unless you're in New Jersey and you get a lifetime restraining order. That's different. Most of the
New
time,
Jersey.
yeah, but most of the time that's not what happens. Like, for a modification to go back for a year and a half, 2 years, let's start building your case, but it's a long game. So we deal with gut punches, and another way we deal with gut punches are, Chris, do you have your balloon man?
I
So
do.
we have our little success symbol. It's the balloon man, and so we have a weekly legal abuse support group, and this is our victory symbol. So we do
The car
victory.
wash. All right.
Yeah. So when somebody makes progress or succeeds, we do the balloon man. We have a little section called From Puddle to Ninja. So the gut punch people will hear from the balloon man people, and they'll often say, I went through what you went through. It's not that you're losing, it's that you're giving up too soon. So we can't let you give up after a gut punch. We have to say this is part of the process.
A lot of our clients have had a great deal of success both in and out of court, but almost no one has like just a string of victories that never ends until this conclusive final battle against the boss monster, and you win that one too. And it's almost no one leaves this process like pouring champagne and all that. There are going to be setbacks along the way. And you need to, as Lisa said, it's a marathon mindset. This is a marathon, not a sprint. So you're going to have some setbacks, recognize it. And as Lisa said, having the support is so critical, because that's what prevents you from letting a setback make you give up.
Yeah. And we do something called image rehabilitation. Like, sometimes we'll meet people and they're like, oh my God, the GAL hates me. The judge hates me. And we're like, all right, let's work on how to make you more persuasive. It's going to take time. You're going to have to do some apologizing. They hate it, but if they're coachable, they listen, and we see things really turn around. But it's focusing on the priorities, and putting ego aside can be very difficult, especially when it feels like your ex is getting away with stuff.
All right. My second to last question. How does Chris, your background in tech, and Lisa, your background in teaching, shape your current work?
My background, I've had a couple of different careers. This is just the latest, but yeah, I was in tech, and a lot of our business, you run a podcast, we're on a recording platform right now. You had to learn how to use that. We do online courses, we do social media, we need a content email system, like all of that tech infrastructure that it takes to run a business. I knew that stuff. So that part of the skill set. But Lisa and I have also both been entrepreneurs in our career, and part of my entrepreneur part overlapped with the tech part. But understanding how to build and grow a business and get attention, do the marketing and all that. Lisa and I are not a multinational corporation.
It's just,
well, maybe we are. There's two of us. I could go to two states, and then we could be a multinational corporation. When you're an entrepreneur and you're starting whether it's a coaching practice or whatever, you're like, everything ends up at your doorstep, right? You need to do it all. And in this modern world, when we have clients all over North America and around the world, the technology is a key part of that. So having that piece there is critically important.
Yeah. And Chris forgot to mention that he has an MBA and his background is in marketing. So he's really good at sales. I am a wimp, so I have to follow along with his lead, because I'm always like, oh, I feel bad asking for money.
Bye.
Yeah. So he's really good at that. Plus, with Chris, he's got the male perspective on domestic violence. That's something that we don't often see. Men don't often talk, and we are very proud of our community. One of our perks for our clients is our weekly legal abuse support group, and we blend our men and women together, and they have a man and a woman talking about their own experience in court and outside of court with parenting. And I think that's very important. So Chris also used to be a financial planner, so that the money knowledge.
Dang. Multifaceted.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, several careers. Like I said, this one was entirely unexpected and is more gratifying than any of them.
Yeah. And then my background as a high school English teacher and professional writer, it's just all the communication stuff. That's what made me do so well, I think, in court. And also, I love lesson planning, and I was like a workaholic teacher. So everything I do, I'm like, oh, I could use this. Oh, I love that quote. So I'm always writing stuff down and getting ideas. We first started off, Chris was like, I don't even know like where to start. And I said, look, I'll take care of that part. Everything's going to fall into place. And it really has. So I
And
think
now,
it's the perfect blend.
right now, as we've grown, we've been doing the strategist stuff for years now, and we notice these constant themes of things that we help people with, and we're turning those themes into online courses. What Lisa said about so that we can reach more people. There are only so many hours in the week that we could actually be working one-on-one with, or in our case, two-on-one with clients. That if we're going to reach more people and help more people, we need a way to replicate ourselves. And to do that through online courses, at least a skill with knowing how to teach, is absolutely invaluable.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's worked out. I feel like this is the best thing ever that we could both do. We both love it.
I was worried about this, just as I know this wasn't the question, but David, when we started, I was a lot less recovered from my own trauma. And I was a little worried about getting into this as a career because I was like, Lisa, what if this is just like triggering over and over for me? And it's been the opposite. It's been the exact opposite. It's been therapeutic. It's been incredible. And I use the analogy of, if you're familiar with how 12-step programs work, one of the things is that you help others recover from whatever it is, gambling or alcohol or whatever, by sponsoring them, right? And it helps you in your own recovery. It's the exact same thing with this. Working with these people who are going through what Lisa and I each went through personally, I find incredibly cathartic and cleansing, and just helps my healing. It's amazing.
And I think the radical empathy from both of us is something our clients really appreciate, because we're not lawyers. We have deeply gone through it. Me in court for 10 years, Chris in court, and also being successful as a pro se. It's like when they get those gut punches, we can say, we have been there. We have been there. We really understand.
Wow. Guys, this has been awesome. But my last question, you ready for it? Have you had any experience with pet co-parent?
Not good experience. Lisa,
Wait, what was that?
pet
co-parenting.
Oh yeah, I thought that's what you said.
Yeah.
Pet parenting.
Yes,
Interesting. Pets are,
because I know it's out there.
yeah, pets are
Yeah.
considered property. Some states
Yeah.
are starting to adopt laws where they're not just property. But yeah,
Wow.
we have a client right now we've had a few with the dogs in particular, where she misses their dogs. The dogs are with the ex in the family home, and the ex will not share the dogs. And we had another client at the appellate level, like really strong, dealing with a dog this was a same-sex couple, and the dog basically was kidnapped with these two like big beefy guys. Her ex came in with these guys, and
She was in the shower, right? Wasn't she? And they brought her ex back in.
yeah, and she would go to the ends of the earth for this dog. And in Canada, they weren't taking it seriously at the time. This was a few years ago. It was just devastating for her.
Wow. God, I love that question. All right, guys. I really appreciate your time. I've learned so much, and you made me think about all this stuff, which I like to do. But to tell the people out there how to find you and talk about your 2 books and go from there.
All right. So super easy. We're just Been There, Got Out. Our website is beenthere.gotout.com. On social media, Instagram's our home base. It's at Been There, Got Out with little underscores. The first book is called Been There, Got Out: Toxic Relationships, High Conflict Divorce, and How to Stay Sane Under Insane Circumstances. The second book is going to be, Chris, hold up your little thing if you have it.
I already put it aside for you. I don't have it.
Shoot. Okay. Anyway, we have a little cover, but it's Been There, Got Out in purple. When Your Ex Turns the Kids Against You. The courses are part of a series called From Fear to Fierce in Family Court. The communication one is called How to Communicate with Your Ex Without Destroying Your Case or Losing Your Mind. Mm-hmm. And the next one is going to be with the book, like When Your Ex Turns the Kids Against You. And then Chris is working on his big parenting plan one.
Yep.
Podcast.
Yeah, the podcast and YouTube. Lisa and I are not cheap to work with. We're not lawyer expensive, but we charge for our time. But we do so many long form interviews with experts, whether it be lawyers or custody evaluators, therapists, trauma counselors, all kinds of people in and around our space that are all up for free on our podcast. More than 300 of them. Lisa's incredible with her interviews that she does. They're on our podcast and on our YouTube channel. And people get so much out of those. And a lot of what we've learned and bring to our coaching comes from things that we've picked up from our community of experts and our clients as well.
Wow. Can we shift gears a little bit and go back to...
You said that was the last question.
I know. Wow.
We're going to charge.
I can a bully. Let's talk about alienation. I totally spaced that one.
Yes. Alienation. That affects 22 million divorced parents in America and Canada alone. It's an epidemic. There's so much shame associated with alienation when one ex, I'll just say like estrangement is a little bit different. Justified estrangement, that's when a parent did something to cause the no contact. And it's very hard to determine if it's justified or not. But alienation is when one parent basically interferes and turns that child against the other parent. And it's absolutely heartbreaking. We often compare it to, imagine, God forbid, if your child died, how you'd have a whole community of people rallying around you to support you. When your child doesn't talk to you, people don't understand domestic violence. They cannot believe that this would happen it could happen to a great parent. And so instead they're judging you, thinking you did something wrong. What could you have done that's so cruel? And so people dealing with this can become very depressed. There's a lot of suicides that are connected, mental health issues, especially as people get older and their kids have cut them off for a long time, and it's just heartbreaking. So that's a big part of what we do with clients too, is how do we deal with it from a legal perspective to prevent it? If we see it happening, which it usually is in our cases, our clients are being falsely accused of it, but more often their ex is doing it and they see it and they're so scared about how to handle it. So we go so deeply into that with many of our clients, especially lately with the book and the course coming out. But there's a lot you can do, especially outside of the legal system. The worst thing you can do is give up.
We talked for a lot of this podcast about legal abuse, right? About somebody who has an abusive personality type weaponizing the legal system to leave you penniless, homeless. This part is the childless part, because they would love to do that, right? So when the relationship is over, a lot of their avenues of exerting power and control over you are closed off. They can't tell you what to make for breakfast anymore, or to do the law. They can't exert that power and control on a day-to-day basis. So they narrow their focus and intensify their focus on those areas: money, the courts, and this last piece that we're talking about now is the kids, right? The toxic personality type lacks empathy, does not care about your relationship with your children, right? Just views the kids as pawns and weapons to be used to exert that power and control over you. So the divorce, it's your fault. You broke up the family. You were the problem. Dad, in your case, left us. We are the family. Dad left us. Dad abandoned us. You're bad. Your ex is good. In my case, it would be dad is bad.
Yeah. So, yeah, big topic.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Read the book, though.
Man. I appreciate your time the day after Christmas, but hold on the line. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it, guys. Big time to hold on the line, and we'll close it up. Everybody, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.